probably forced us to hold up a mirror and see the cracks in our society that have been so easy to ignore before. This crisis has created an opportunity to redefine ourselves, and we must embrace it. But as we embark on this new era for our state, we need to take a hard look in that mirror and deal with harsh realities, like the fact that 300,000 New Yorkers left our state last year alone. That's the steepest population drop of any state in the nation, an alarm bell that cannot be ignored. To those who left temporarily because of the pandemic or trying to decide their next steps during these uncertain times, I have one message. You do not want to miss what's going to happen next. Right now, in real time, we're building a new New York worthy of your talents and your ambitions. We're going to jumpstart our economic recovery by being the most business-friendly and worker-friendly state in the nation. To entice people and businesses, we're investing millions of dollars to transform the downtowns of our cities into magnets for new jobs and opportunities, and position both legacy and emerging industries for success. We all know New York is already home to some of the most consequential industries in the world: finance, retail, healthcare, technology, fashion, entertainment, just to name a few. But there's plenty of room for growth. More shovel-ready sites for new manufacturers and warehouses, improvements in our freight infrastructure, and investments in technology that'll power the jobs of the future. And we're going to make sure that we have a workforce trained to step into these jobs. That's why we'll invest smartly and strategically in workforce development programs, which simply means matching people to training to jobs. I know the demand is strong. At every one of the thousands of workplaces I visited, the universal complaint is not having enough trained workers. Every single place, it's the same. And that's why we'll reboot our Workforce Development Office. How is it an Empire State Development so it can build stronger relationships with employers and move funding through our regional economic development councils so we can grow programs that train for jobs that are actually in demand in different parts of the state. And the smart way to do this is to have school districts, community colleges, SUNY and CUNY, all focused on the same objectives. We're going to incentivize success by tying a portion of workforce funding to high job placement rates. And we're going to make it easier to qualify as an MWBE so everyone has access to opportunities. It's a common sense approach, unbacked by an uncommon level of funding, and it's going to help supercharge our economy. Our goal is for New York to be known as nationally as the place that grows and attracts the talent, and the businesses will follow. And for businesses to succeed, they need a well-trained and educated workforce. And I believe to my very core that there's nothing more valuable than education and training when it comes to unlocking opportunity and prosperity. It changes lives across generations. I know what education did in my own family's circumstances. My grandparents fled Ireland as teenagers because they had nothing. They were poor, with no hint of opportunity in their home country. My grandfather first became a migrant farm worker in the fields of South Dakota. Then later, he and Grandma were domestic workers. Then it all changed when he heard there was great jobs in a place called Buffalo, New York, at the Bethlehem Steel Plant. And Grandma found a job at Bell Aerospace, making parts for our planes during World War II. That was their ticket to the life that they came in search of. But what really transformed my family was the fact that my father was able to get a college degree at night while working by day at the same steel plant as his father. If he hadn't taken that leap and invested in his own education, I would be living a very different life today. My whole family would be. And that's why I'm so focused on expanding educational opportunities, starting by making the state's tuition assistance program available to part-time students. I believe that SUNY and CUNY are the engines of social mobility and have untapped potential that still needs to be unleashed and harnessed. So today, I'm outlining a vision to make SUNY the best statewide public higher education system in the nation. How? First, recruiting world-class faculty and creating a flagship institutions at Stony Brook and the University at Buffalo, investing more in our premier research facilities at Binghamton and Albany, and leaning into the strengths of our four-year comprehensive colleges, our technology colleges, and our community colleges, but also providing childcare on each campus. And let's increase enrollment to 500,000 students by 2030. Making SUNY a national leader on equity and increasing the number of diversity in every community, with degrees and credentials that'll launch middle-class careers, and ensuring that SUNY campuses spur economic growth in their own surrounding communities. As we upgrade our statewide higher education institutions, we also have to acknowledge their populations at risk of falling through the cracks unless we target job training and educational opportunities to them as well. For example, we know that incarcerated people who participate in correctional education programs are far less likely to reoffend and 13 times more likely to obtain employment after returning home. That outcome benefits the formerly incarcerated, employers in need of workers, and the taxpayers of New York, and it's the right thing to do. So today I'm announcing a new Jails to Jobs initiative, so incarcerated people have the support they need to find employment during reentry. We're also going to restore the tuition assistance program for incarcerated people again, ending a 30-year ban. As we create economic opportunity in every sector, there's one industry that'll be working around the clock for years to come. My friends in the construction trades, building infrastructure the likes of which we've never seen. You know, infrastructure can mean different things to different people. To me, it's exciting because it's all about creating connections, connecting neighborhoods, connecting people to jobs, and connecting people to their families. Substandard infrastructure can mean long commutes, lost time from family, even missing a child's bedtime. Time in a tire repair shop after hitting a pothole adds more stress than anyone needs. And that's why I view building and improving our infrastructure as a quality of life issue. In November, I stood with my former colleagues in Congress on the White House lawn when President Biden signed the historic infrastructure bill, giving us a once-in-a-century chance to invest. We cannot let this moment slip by, and we won't. New Yorkers demand the best, and that's exactly what they're going to get. Just look what my administration has already announced over the past 4 months. We'll finally transform Penn Station into a world-class facility worthy of our city, and ensure that the Gateway project finally moves forward. We'll deliver long overdue upgrades at both LaGuardia and JFK airports, and finish the 2nd Avenue subway to connect East Harlem to jobs. But we're just getting started. Today I'm announcing a bold idea. Take an old, unused 14-mile-long right-of-way and create what we're calling the Interborough Express, a new rail service that'll connect Brooklyn and Queens. I'm directing the MTA to immediately commence an environmental review so we can get that project rolling down the track. I'm also directing the Port Authority to get moving on the Cross Harbor Tunnel. As I said, infrastructure is all about connections, and we need to reconnect neighborhoods that were severed by asphalt highways, disproportionately impacting communities of color. We're going to reverse the damage that was done more than half a century ago with projects like the Kensington Expressway in Buffalo, I-81 in Syracuse, the Inner Loop in Rochester, and the Cross Bronx Expressway. You know, I've traveled to every one of our 62 counties in each of the past 7 years, so I know every single road and highway and bridge. And I think I have a personal experience with just about every pothole in New York as well, especially on the Long Island Expressway. I'm coming after them too. And we're making the largest ever investment in New York's digital infrastructure, putting $1 billion into connecting more New Yorkers with high-speed internet. This investment will boost innovation and economic growth, especially in our most remote communities. There's one more piece of critical infrastructure in our plan to rebuild, making our infrastructure more resilient against climate change. I remember just days after being sworn into office, we were slammed with Hurricane Ida. I walked the streets of East Elmhurst, Queens, and witnessed the aftermath of an epic collision between Mother Nature and our inferior infrastructure, with devastating consequences. It was a cruel reminder that too much time has already been lost in the fight against climate change. And these events are no longer rare. The next one is coming. Look no further than upstate counties constantly battered by so-called 500-year flooding, or the tunnels in New York City and communities on Long Island still undergoing repairs more than a decade after Hurricane Sandy hit. This is a threat to our way of life, here and now, and that's why we must and we will implement an ambitious agenda to meet this moment. We've already started with increasing the Environmental Bond Act to $4 billion to go on the ballot this fall so we have the resources we need. I'm now announcing a nation-leading $500 million investment in offshore wind energy that will create thousands of good-paying green jobs. As we build out our wind energy capacity and continue our transition to clean energy, our reliance on fossil fuels must be phased out. In September, I announced 2 clean energy mega projects to put us on a path to achieve the ambitious goal of cutting 80% of New York City's power plant emissions by 2030. New construction in the state will be zero emission by 2027, and will build climate-friendly electric homes and promote electric cars, trucks, and buses. You know, protecting our environment is personal to me. I was born at a time and in a place where orange smoke billowed out of the factory smokestacks, literally blocking the skies with a horrible stench I can still recall to this day, all the while dumping toxic waste into one of the world's largest freshwater lakes. I live surrounded by the causes of climate change, and now I'm living with the effects. So while we confront climate crisis, we will address one of the most basic of human needs, and that is to also feel safe on streets, in schools, and in homes. Time and time again, New Yorkers tell me that they don't feel safe. They don't like what they see on the streets. And things feel different now, and not always for the better. And it's not just New York City, it's cities all across America. And many factors contribute to our streets feeling less safe, including a very real uptick in gun violence nationwide since the start of the pandemic. Now, this is not a return to the dark days of the 70s and 80s and 90s, but that's not our metric for success. We need to get back on track. In October, I signed a bill that closed loopholes in gun possession and registration, making it easier for law enforcement to track down weapons used in crimes and prevent gun trafficking. And we banned the sale of ghost guns. Going forward, we will double down on practical, proven law enforcement strategies to combat gun violence. Working with Mayor Adams in New York and the Lieutenant Governor, who I've asked to take lead for our administration, we'll form a new consortium, unprecedented cooperation between New York State Police, the NYPD, and other law enforcement agencies, including our neighboring states. And we'll trace guns used in crimes and stop the flow of guns into our state. Meanwhile, we'll triple the resources for both our gun tracing efforts as well as for successful community-based programs. Fighting gun violence is critical, but we must address other factors contributing to the pervasive unease that many are feeling in our streets. And that includes the humanitarian crisis unfolding right before us, the rise in street homelessness. Our fellow New Yorkers who are in this situation deserve our compassion, and they will receive it along with our support. We will create teams of mental health professionals and social workers who will partner with New York City and will reach homeless individuals and move them into shelters and housing. But at the same time, we know that street homelessness only accounts for a small fraction of the homeless population. Beyond those sleeping on the streets, tens of thousands more people move in and out of shelters as they try to secure a place to call home. And tragically, many of them are children. We need to focus on addressing the root cause of homelessness, unmet mental health needs, poverty, addiction, and housing insecurity. Every New Yorker deserves access to affordable housing, whether they're at the risk of homelessness or simply struggle to pay the rent on time each month. So many people not only face tremendous economic hardship, but here's the double hit. Housing prices have also contributed to escalate that possibility out of the reach of many, worsening the situation even more. And that's why I'm launching a new 5-year housing plan to create and preserve 100,000 affordable homes, including 10,000 units with supportive services for high-risk populations, like runaway youth and formerly incarcerated individuals. And we can no longer ignore the plight of NYCHA residents living in sometimes deplorable conditions. The Lieutenant Governor and I will work with the City of New York and this legislature on concrete action this section. So we'll also fix outdated land use laws that hold back our housing supply. We'll encourage transit-oriented development, and the conversion of hotels and offices into housing is part of our overall housing strategy. Accomplishing everything I've proposed thus far hinges on one thing: a government people trust. Across the country, trust in government is reaching all-time lows. We know why. Misinformation and lies on social media, a widening partisan divide, gridlock in Washington, even outright attacks on the right to vote. It's getting harder and harder for people to believe in their elected leaders at all levels of government. And here's the question: how do we restore their faith? Here in New York, our answer is to demonstrate what good and honest governance looks like. And we've already announced our first step. We are submitting a proposal to the legislature to enact 2 term limits for statewide officials. For government to work, those of us in power cannot continue to cling to it. We need to continually pass the baton to new leaders with different perspectives and fresh ideas. Our reforms include a ban on outside income for statewide officials, because our only job should be to serve the people of New York. But that's not the only part of the system that's not working. It's no secret that recent events have called into question the effectiveness of the Joint Commission on Public Ethics, JCOPE. I will introduce legislation to replace that commission with a new ethics enforcement watchdog, one with real teeth, one that answers to New Yorkers and not politicians. None of these changes will fix our government overnight, but having these safeguards in place won't mean most of us in elective office still won't stumble and make honest mistakes once in a while. But by putting in much-needed reforms, we can at least begin to restore public trust by focusing on what really matters to our constituents. Now, what you've just heard is a mere sampling of more than 220 proposals that fill a book that we're releasing today. Quite an extraordinary accomplishment given our 134 days in office. And I commend the hardworking staff who helped me shape this agenda. And I'm proud to have the most diverse, talented team New York State has ever had. Before we leave and get to work, I want to pause a moment to reflect on our state's unique history and the destiny that lies before us. Since its beginning, our country has attracted people from all around the world in search of an ideal that made leaving their homeland worth the risk. 2 simple words: the American dream. And in pursuit of this, millions found their way here to us. New York has always meant the promise of a better life. For those immigrating through Ellis Island, fleeing slavery in the South, or resettling here as refugees from Afghanistan. And our state is nationally recognized as the birthplace of movements for equality and progress: the labor movement, the women's rights movement, the LGBTQ+ movement, the environmental movement, the racial justice movement. They're all started right here by enlightened New Yorkers. We attract the best, the brightest, the boldest. We embrace and celebrate racial, ethnic, and gender diversity, culture and entertainment, where a single word like Broadway says it all. Where the unsurpassed beauty of Niagara Falls, the Adirondacks, Jones Beach, the Finger Lakes, Erie Canal, and the Hudson River Valley, as well as the grandeur of the New York City skyline aglow at night. It's breathtaking. This is who we are, and we are proud of it. The keepers of the flames of the movement's past, stewards of the national treasures entrusted to us, and the visionaries who will lead our state into the future with courage and with confidence. While we may be imperfect, New York has always been the risk takers, the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the builders, the new immigrants, the students, the true believers, and the dreamers who know that there truly is only one New York. My fellow New Yorkers, members of the legislature, the time has come for a new American dream, a better, fairer, more inclusive version that I call the New York dream. For New York is not just a place like other states. It's also an ideal, one that embodies excitement, energy, and endless possibilities. Just as we are inspired by the history bequeathed to us by the great New Yorkers who led our nation's social justice movements, and leaders, like I said, like FDR, who navigated us through a crisis with a calm, steady hand. So too will history look back on our time. How we are judged will be determined by what we do right here, right now. Let us seize this moment with great confidence and optimism and create a legacy of accomplishment that will endure through the ages, a new era for New York. And may God bless the people of the great state of New York and our nation. Thank you.
This joint session is adjourned.